everybody. I'm glad to see that you actually made the last night, so you're able to be here, and you did the amazing race to find this ballroom, so you really want to be here. As I said, welcome to this UAG Direct Access session. My name is Petri Ala-Annala. I'm working for Microsoft as a security architect. I'm based in Helsinki, Finland, so that's not the secret security lab is somewhere. That just stands for Microsoft Finland. And those of you who don't know anything about Finland, I have a few pictures. Because when I arrived here, somebody said that, yeah, it's winter time. That's winter. That's snow and ice, and it takes like three months to survive. That's that winter. So we have that long winters, and somebody says that we have actually polar bears as well. Actually, when I took that picture, it was January, and I went to Japan, and those guys, the polar bears, they are from Tokyo Ueno Zoo, so we don't have polar bears. Sorry guys about that. So let's start with the UAG. There we go. We are going to, through direct access architecture, we are going to see how the UAG is working and what is the difference between the Server 2008 R2 direct access and UAG direct access, and why you should have the UAG deployed when you're looking after direct access, DA, direct access. So just show of hands, how many of you have tested direct access? How many of you are actually using direct access? Okay, how many are using direct access with UAG? Great. Then you're in the right place. Before joining Microsoft 2 years ago, I was working as a CISO for energy company, so I know real world as well, not just Microsoft Blue World. So in real world, I understand that the balance is everything. You just have to have balance in security. If we look at that picture, would you do that? Really? Would you? Maybe 60 miles an hour, 90 kilometers an hour. That's nothing. What about this? Would you enjoy the guys there and have a drink or two? Maybe. When I was working for that energy company, somebody told me there's absolutely no risk in that picture. Yeah, right. I won't do that. So balance is everything. If we think about security as risk management, how about the controls? In real life, this control, did it work? Somehow, the main part of the bike is still there, but there were some different risks that control didn't work out. Okay, as an auditor, I have seen plenty of these in IT. Controls which are there, they are costly, and actually you don't need those. So you are overdoing the security. So when we are speaking about direct access and security solutions, I understand that there must be risk assessment and there must be discussion with the networking guys and the security guys to make it right. Risk assessment. 5 seconds and you will be certified to my risk assessment framework. There you go. You know that somebody will win eventually. There's only one winner and everybody knows what are the rules. Well, of course there's real frameworks out there. You can use them. I hope that you have some framework that you're using. The most important thing is that the security must be aligned with the business. So the business goals must be, the security must support the business goals, and maybe it actually can open some new doors and actually support the new business as well, open new opportunities. There's a lot of security guides and guidance, different kind of documentation from Microsoft and even to UAG, for example. That's already hardened box and solution, but even to UAG you will find the hardening guide if you want to do it a little bit more. If you have sensitive network and sensitive information, then you might look after that guidance as well. Just to calibrate some thoughts, authentication process, when we are speaking about remote access solutions, there's usually different kind of authentications going on, usually both ways. So the client authenticates the servers or the resources, and the servers might usually, well, they usually authenticate the clients as well. So we have a client, it can be a process, client, server, whatever process, and it tries to go into a file share, another process, database, so on. We have to make identification. Well, that's easy. That's usually the public thing. My name is Petri Alannala. How can I prove that? Well, nobody tracks me out of the stage, so I must be Petri Alannala. Authorization, so what can I do? At the moment, I can speak. That's great. Well, AD groups, that's the one way to do the authorization and control the authorization. And just before the object, the resource, we usually have some kind of access controls as well. Easy thing, everybody knows these. So, direct access, what is it? It took me 27 hours to fly here. That's a long flight if you don't. I'm afraid of flying, so that was a nice trip. So I was in Abu Dhabi just waiting my plane. They actually offer free internet. That's great. It was really working correctly and really fast one. So I almost missed the plane to Brisbane. Because of the direct access, when I fired up my laptop, I used my cached credentials to get into my laptop. I was happy, as you can see in the picture. My Windows actually asked me to provide the smart card credentials. That's our decision. That's our risk management that has been there. The assessment is that we have to use strong authentication to use direct access. So my Windows said that, please give me the smart card credentials. I used my smart card, and voila, I was able to get into our internal resources. I was looking for a vacation. Actually, I will have 1 week vacation here, so I'm really happy to stay here. The weather is better. So I'm using just the host names. Everything works exactly the same way that it's working inside of our corporate network. And when I looked the IP config, I figured that actually I'm using HTTPS SSL connection to go from that wireless network to our corporate network. Well, that's something. Last week I attended the TechEd Australia. I was staying in that hotel. They actually charged me something to use the internet. So I had to have the internet access, otherwise the direct access is not working. That's really a requirement. I paid for the internet and I was online. Great. Once again, I was able to use direct access because I'm using my own laptop and I'm using my credentials with the smart card. You don't have to use smart cards. You can use just the plain Windows credentials if you want. And there I was using RFIM, updating my profile and groups and that kind of things. And when I looked at the IP config, I saw that actually I'm using Teredo technology in that place. Why? Well, they were using private networking and there was a NAT between the networks, so that was the reason why direct access was using Teredo. Usually when I speak about direct access, I have used my direct access already 1 year, and that's one thing that I will never give up. You can try to convince me to go back and use a VPN, but I will not give that away. One of our customers back in Finland, it's not a big customer, it's just 250 people working there, but they are using their laptops and networks over 4 different countries. we have like 50 different locations. And just by using direct access instead of the normal VPN, they were able to save 2 hours work time in a week. That's just 5 minutes if you're just changing the connection 3 times a day. That's a 5 minute in one place you're saving. Ends up pretty nice figures. So direct access is anywhere access. It's designed to be always on, and there's no need for user interaction by default. You can have that if you're using smart cards. When my computer was going up, I had that internet connection. Actually, at the moment, I have direct access to my laptop. Our internal IT is able to manage my computers. I'm able to have my group policies updated, the computer certificates, passwords, they are updating my own password. If there's expiry or reset, they are all working by default. And there's also possibility to use NAP, the network access protection, with the direct access. So my laptop is not the Wild West. It is unable to join the direct access if it's not updated by our own policy. And as a security guy, I believe that, well, I don't believe, I actually trust that this implementation of direct access is pretty solid because it's using IPv6 and IPsec. AES encryption, for example, certificates. There's lots of revocation, for example, for the PKI stuff. So those things that you were able to do with XP and well, 10 years ago, for example, XP was not checking the revocation in many times, so that's history. So you have to have really solid and working environment to have the direct access. If you think about VPNs, they usually just give access to some resources. Direct access actually extends your network, the corporate LAN, to each and every computer that you are having when they are online. Direct access was introduced with Windows 7. You can actually use Windows Server 2008 R2 as a direct access client as well. That's something you can do. Maybe there's a branch office you just want to have one server somewhere, and you're able to save the WAN, dedicated WAN if you're using direct access. There's 2 ways to do direct access. Use the plain server, R2 version, or UAG. And there's lots of reasons why you just have to use UAG. Let's see what those reasons are. So this is the setup. I have Windows 7 client. It's a domain member. There's a computer certificate. Between there's internet. It can be IPv4, IPv6. It doesn't matter. Usually people are telling us, yeah, you have to have IPv6 based internet and your own LAN to use direct access, but you just need that IPv6 connectivity. That's all. So my direct access connection goes through the internet, and actually it goes through the direct access server and then to my internal network. Great. Why we are using IPv6? Well, IPv4 addresses they are running out. We have to do something. So if you look at the packages, and it's good to point out that these packages are encrypted by a packet. There's no IPv6 tunnel. There's a tunnel mode for sure, but each and every packet is encrypted and authenticated by direct access. So first of all, there's a header which says that you just have to tunnel this traffic to direct access server, and then it is stripped, and then you are using IPv4 routing internally as well. So you just have to have that IPv6 connectivity. You can use the translation technologies. I will go through those techniques later on. But that's the main idea. As I said before, we're using IPsec to authenticate and encrypt the traffic. You can use end-to-end encryption as well. That's option as well, one option. But then the internal network must have IPv6 capable resources. That's something that you just have to have. The usual way to deploy direct access is to end the encryption to your direct access server and then use whatever networking you are using, maybe SSL, maybe plain IP traffic internally. And then there's the name resolution part. You saw that I was using just the host names. So when I have direct access and I'm using the host names, I'm able to use the internal DNS to resolve the resource names for internal names or internal resources. Every other query is going to my connection-specific DNS. So that's using as it used to work. And that DNS traffic is actually going through my DNS tunnel, DA, direct access tunnel. I will show you that as well later. What about UAG? If you know ISO Server has a new version. It's called TMG, the Threat Management Gateway. That's built on Windows Server. So UAG is built on TMG. And in UAG, you're able to have web application publishing like OVA and Exchange. They are the most used one. Then you are able to have layer 3 VPN solution, and that's through SSL VPN. No clients. If you're using Windows 7, you really have like clientless SSL VPN with UAG. And I prefer that as a backup plan for DA. That's actually what we are doing internally as well. So if DA is not working, some weird reason, we're able to use the VPN as a backup plan. And UAG was designed to be on the edge. So that's a pretty hard box, and it's built on TMG. You can use terminal services, Citrix, through UAG as well, have a single sign-off experience for the users, and then it's capable of doing the direct access server functions as well. What is the clue? It's able to do IPv4 networking as well. It's pretty simple to scale out. Those are the two reasons why you usually need UAG to deploy direct access. Well, at least for a successful deployment, you need UAG. So, computers, they must be domain joined. Users are your domain users. So for the management computers, the managed computers, DA is the right solution. Other users which are unmanaged, or maybe you have some unmanaged computers, then the SSL or SSTP, and the main reason to use UAG as a SSTP endpoint is that you're able to use portal SSTP. So, for example, for the partners, you just give an URL, and the partner just logs in, and then there's one single URL. When that is hit, the SSTP client inside the Windows 7 can be used. So that's a really clientless SSL VPN, which you can use, and that's a great backup plan as well. Everything is based on Windows Server, so there's two ways you can buy the UAG. You can use the software version and choose whatever hardware that you want to use. Maybe if you're keen on having appliances around. Nowadays, most people are not. But if you want to do that, there's hardware appliances also available. If you heard that, well, there's a TMG on the UAG box, I want to use that for everything. There's a support boundaries that you should check out. There's only limited things that you can do with that TMG version, because the UAG basically just owns the TMG beneath it. That was the plain Windows Server 2008 R2 direct access. So Windows 7's IPv6 connectivity inside and internally and at the internet as well. When you're replacing the UAG, if you replace the direct access by UAG, what do you get? you're able to use IPv4 resources by default. So there's services, NAC64, DNS64 that you can use with UHG, and you're able to scale out as well. And there's the SSL VPN capabilities as well. That's a pretty nice add-on to your remote access solution. So how the UHG is built? If I show you the UHG in TechEd Australia, they were saying that, yeah, you didn't show the UHG GUI. Well, there's only few places that you're configuring when you're configuring the DA. I will show you that. It takes like 1 minute to show that one. But it's good to know what is the big picture and what are the bits and pieces what you're playing with. So the blue ones come from the OS. The orange ones is the DMG, and the green bits are from UHG. And the really nice things are the DNS64 and the 64. So UHG has different roles. It can be our 64 relay. I will go to 64 later on. It can be our Teredo server and relay, IP, HTTPS relay as well, or server as well, and IPv6 router if you're not introduced any IPv6 internally. So maybe UHG can help you with that one. It can also be used as an ISATAP router. So let's see how it works. There we added IPv4 resources. They are just old Windows 2000 boxes or maybe AEXs or whatever printers. They are using just IPv4 connectivity. With UHG you're able to resolve the IPv6 DNS queries, because the Windows 7 direct access client, that's only asking IPv6 based name resolution. So UHG is going to make the DNS queries to IPv4 resources. And then when you know that information, you're able to access the IPv4 resources by NATing the IPv6 address that the client is using to IPv4 address internally. And still, you're able to use the same techniques that are there before when you're not using UHG. So that would be native IPv6 and ISATAP. And that was a scale out. You usually just want to have 2 boxes, because if you think about direct access should work always. So that's a really bad answer if you just give, well, we just have 1 direct access box, so double it. So how my client is how does it know that I'm outside of the local network? Where there's a network location awareness service. So that's based on one server URL. That's just a plain HTTPS URL. If my client, when I'm inside of our corporate network, if I see that HTTP URL, I'm able to connect to that website. I have to do the certificate revocation as well. But if everything goes well and I'm able to access that website, DA won't be used. Okay? Fair enough. When I'm outside, that URL should not be available for me. So the DA client or the rules and the techniques that are used with direct access, they are actually firing up. Why this is done this way? Why we are not looking when we are outside of the corporate network? Think about the DDoS attacks, for example, if that would be done the other way. So just a plain URL, publicly available URL to figure out if you're outside of your own network. Just a plain DDoS and your clients would be just out of the game quite easily. So this is the reason the network location server must be always on, and it should be a really high available server. And with the PKI as well. The revocation, the CRILs, the files must be available always. Otherwise, the DA clients will be firing up different rules and IPsec tunneling to your direct access UAG when they are internal. That goes also if you have branch offices. You really want to have branch offices with the network location server as well. So if WAN goes down, those clients are not using DA. They are just using the local resources. Maybe you want to have different techniques to access the resources when the WAN is down. There's actually pretty good article by Cable Guy, so please look at that article when you're deploying the UAG network or the network location service. You can use your own internal PKI. There's no reason why that's not working, but just make sure that it's high available. Cluster it, make sure that the CRILs are available as well. The name resolution. I said that my client was able to figure out that my internal resources must be used. So how that's done. There's a new feature in Windows 7 and Server 2008 R2 client, which is called name resolution policy. So that's basically doing the same thing that we have in DNS server, conditional forwarding. So some queries are going to my connection-specific DNS, some queries are going through the DA channel to my internal DNS server. So I can have the internal IPs and I'm able to access the internal resources. So this can be set up by group policies as well as the network location server. Pretty much everything is configured by group policies. That's one of the reasons why those machines must be domain joined. Authentication is the second thing why they must be domain joined. Pretty easy technology in there. DNSSEC actually uses the same extensions that the DA uses in the DNS client. I said that the DNS64 and NAT264 are provided with UAG. You can use external DNS64 or NAT64 providers. That's also supported. But it's pretty easy to configure those. Just tick the boxes and you're set to go with UAG. So my client asks for a resource and it just queries the quad A query to my UAG. And this is just for the internal resources. Everything which is external, the connection-specific DNS is used for those. So my DNS server knows that the file server, console.com, has a record instead of quad A. So it just replies with the A record. And that A record is actually converted to IPv6 enabled DNS reply quad A by UAG. That's easy. Automatic, and it works with NAT64. So now when my client accesses the UAG and has that IPv6 address, it is translated, NATed to IPv4, and packets goes down to my client as well. What about the techniques that we are using when we are accessing the UAG, when we are roaming in internet? So there's a different translation techniques. If you are able to use IPv6, native IPv6, there's no problems. That's pretty much already done. And everything which you can see now here, they are automatically done and deployed and sorted out. So first of the translation technologies is the 64. So when my computer has public IPv4 address, I'm able to use these techniques. So basically just tunnels the IPv6 traffic into IPv4 traffic. Pretty straightforward, and it uses the protocol 41 to do that. So what happens, encapsulates already the encapsulated traffic to IPv4. Okay? Then if we don't have public IPv4 addresses, what happens? Well, these cannot be used, so another techniques must be used then, and everything goes smoothly with your client. It decides that now we're using a public IPv4 address, now we're using NAT address, for example. So when I went to Australia, I was using Teredo, and that was just because I was behind a NAT. I didn't have a public IP, so everything was encapsulated to UDP traffic, IPv4 UDP traffic. So once again, encapsulation, redirection, encapsulation, and routing. That's the way things work today. I was just trying to tell my mom what I'm going to speak here. It was too hard for me to do. But that's the things what we just have to do before we are able to use the native IPv6 addresses and routing. The last one, if we have private address, we are using NAT, but the UDP is blocked. That's pretty much like the 80% of the times that I'm using DA, this actually happens. So we discovered that we are lacking something. Microsoft developed IP HTTPS protocol. There's nothing fancy about that protocol because it's using just the plain standard stuff. But what it does, it just encapsulates IPv6 traffic into IPv4 SSL. So you're able to bypass the web proxies, the firewalls, and so on. So you can understand that when we are doing this kind of transition, there's some costs involved with that. So the traffic might be a little bit slower than when you were using a native IPv6 traffic. But this is the availability that we are looking after. At the moment, I think I was able to use IP HTTPS traffic with my own computer in this network segment. And everything goes automatically when I'm using the direct access client. Actually, there was no indicator when the direct access is on, when the UAG and the direct access services were launched. But nowadays we have a small client which can indicate if you're having a network problem or if you're having an authentication problem. So that helps a lot. And with that IP HTTPS server that's also running on the UAG, you're able to use public certificates. That helps. If you're using your own internal PKI, make sure that the revocation is available for the roaming clients which are outside of your network. They must access the revocation to be able to trust the IP HTTPS server and establish the DA through that technology. The internal network. We have to have the IPv6 connectivity in that space as well. So the options were use UAG, then you're able to use NAT64 and DNS64 services. Use native IPv6, that's also always an option. And then the third one is to use ISATEP protocol. That's as well automatic protocol, and it's almost the same than the 64 protocol. So it's using protocol 41 and encapsulates the IPv4 traffic to IPv6. But that's supported with Windows 2008 R2 servers. So the bottom line, UAG, NAT64, because of the resources that you have at the moment. So when my direct access is setting up, there's two tunnels which are established. So they are also done automatically. I cannot see anything when this magic happens. So there's internet access. UAG between the local LAN, and then there's the resources. We have domain controllers, DNS, management stuff there. We have different resources as well. There can be segments and there can be firewalls between the services, but when the connections are configured correctly, you can do this. So first, my laptop presents itself to the UAG. Tries to, because of the group policies that it has, it tries to establish the connection to UAG server. Internet connection must be on, and the IPv6 connectivity must be there. So the first tunnel is established. That's the infrastructure tunnel, and that's used for the user authentication. So that first tunnel goes to my management servers, to my AD, so I'm able to establish the second tunnel. Some of our customers are just using the first tunnel, nothing else, because this gives you the management option. So at the moment, our IT is able to establish, for example, a remote desktop to my laptop, or I can use the group policies or SCUM or SCCM, whatever we are using. And the second tunnel, that's established when I'm logging in, when I'm using my own AD credentials. And that's also using the IPsec tunnel, and as you can figure out, the purple tunnel goes to the edge, and then later on the IPv6 connectivity is used, so that's plain text or just plain traffic, whatever you are using. And the first tunnel, the DNS queries to internal network, that was the first tunnel was used for that one, and everything else that the user uses use the second tunnel. So that's the main idea when you're using direct access. What about if you have OCS or whatever client which is not capable of handling the IPv6 connectivity? Some hard coding or some neat stuff that they have done with the clients, for example. You are not. There's no reason that you should use just the D8 tunnels. So, for example, I'm using OCS as well at the moment. So that traffic goes just like it went before my VPN or direct access solution. So that can be redirected to the external services as well. So there's no need to put everything through the DA, direct access tunnels. Some of the clients might need some upgrade or configuration so they can handle the DA. Maybe some upgrades or at least some configuration. The first tunnel, now comes the reason why the computers must be domain joined. So the first tunnel is using IPv6 connectivity, IPsec, and it authenticates the tunnel by using computer certificates or certificate and computer accounts NTLM v2. So that's the reason that the first tunnel is established. And why we are using NTLM instead of Kerberos? Well, we don't have that first connection when we are shaking hands with the infrastructure, so we have to use NTLM for that one. When the first tunnel is established, we are able to use Kerberos. So the second tunnel is actually using Kerberos authentication, and the user is authenticated by using Kerberos authentication. The second tunnel uses as well the client certificate. So you need PKI for direct access for sure. There's some limitations on the first tunnel. When I said that the management can be done through the first tunnel, the limitation is that if you're using NAT64, actually the name says it. It's not NAT 4 to 6, it's just NAT64. So if you're using NAT64, so your management server are using IPv4 resources and IPv4 resources only, you're unable to establish that management channel to the client. because there is no NAT for the 6 translation in UAG. So the solution is use IPv6 capable servers like the R2 or ISATAP. So those few management servers that you want to use to establish the tunnels to clients, make sure that they are updated to R2 and they are using IPv6 or ISATAP. There might be some other vendor-specific problems, but you can figure out when they are not working. So maybe there's some other ways to come around these issues. The second tunnel that was authenticated by computer certificate and user Kerberos, and that's really the gold mine, because you are able to access almost everything you have, the resources internally, and as well there's 64 limitation, but usually the user establishes the transaction. It starts the transaction, so that's not that big an issue with the second tunnel. So in our own implementation, we are using smart cards. Actually, when we think about strong authentication, there might be some needs for multi-pass authentication or whatever stronger way to authenticate the user. It's good to remind that actually DA is actually using already certificates, domain, computer accounts. We are using Kerberos logins, so that's multi-factor authentication already. If you're not happy with that one, you're able to use OTP authentication with the partner solution at the moment, and there might be some updates to support, for example, Secure ID with UAG in the future. But smart cards, that's something that you're able to use at the moment already. So that's pretty strong authentication that you are able to have with smart cards. So then the second tunnel is authenticated by using the user certificate inside of your smart card. Pretty straightforward thing. Then the second integration that you can do if you want to a little bit stronger or more secure infrastructure is to make the NAP integration. And the NAP integration is used that way so that the NAP health certificate is used to authenticate the second tunnel. So the first tunnel we are using computer certificate, computer account. The second tunnel we are using smart cards and health certificates from the NAT service. So that's also a pretty solid way to make sure that the management is working, and when the user is using direct access, we know that the user is that user, and also that the computer is in a pretty good state. There's a few technical details on a TechNet what comes to deployment and the performance, so you can check those up. And when you look at those values and different deployments, these are based on one UAG server with 60 gigabytes of memory. There's 2 NICs on that UAG server, so if you're using just the management only mode, then you are able to handle with one UAG box around 4,000 computers. And when you're using the both tunnels as a default deployment, then it's around 2,000 users. So if you're using 2 boxes, you can figure out what are the numbers for your users. And few CPUs, basically the CPU is something which is critical. So when you're thinking about using the virtual version of UAG or appliances, for example, you see that there's lots of differences between those. Of course, if you have the virtualization, there's an overhead which comes with that solution. There's some optimized hardware that you can use. For example, AES optimized CPUs, they are out there. And as I said before, some of the UAG appliances are really, they have really nice boxes. I would use them in some installations, just because of the hardware. It's really neat combination that they have. What about the place where the UAG, the direct access server, should be implemented? Some want it to be on the DMZ, some want it to be internally. The one thing that you must remember, UAG in direct access implementation must be a member of your domain. Otherwise, the Kerberos authentication and the things you are doing with the IPsec is just not possible to do. So the UAG must be a member, and there must be a connection between your internal resources for that one as well. But as long as the network works and the protocols and traffic is going there, you're able to do whatever you like. Then the second question is how you're doing the multi-site arrays, for example. Well, that depends how your network is deployed. What are the locations, for example. Maybe you want to use the same approach that you are at the moment using with the VPNs. So you're setting up different locations, different UAG arrays in different locations, for example. Maybe there's some network connectivity that you can use so that the users are able to connect the nearest location to your UAG service. But itself, the UAG does not provide like geo clustering kind of functions. It's just unable to do that. Just picking up an IP and figuring out what is the closest UAG box. That would be something, but at the moment we are unable to do that. And when I said that you are able to use the normal internet access with your internal resources, I said that the split tunneling and split routing is on by default. And when I said that the real world and the risk assessment must be done, so this is a question. You are able to use forced tunneling if you want, but it's 2010. Are you willing to do that? If you're using that at the moment with your VPN solution, that might be an option for you. You're used to do that, but at least make that have that discussion and make the decision based on the risks, not just because we did that 15 years ago already. So make sure that that's a real decision that you're doing that can be configured. When I said that there's no way to figure out if the DA is not, well, if it's working or if it's not working. So by default, there's no indicator for that. But if you download the Solution Accelerator, the DCA, it gives you more than just this prompt that I had. If you're not using SmartCard, this prompt is not used at all. So with the DCA, you will have small icon on the notification. It's not the taskbar tray, it's a notification area. So you will have an indicator in that area which says that, well, your DA is not working. There might be some problems with the connectivity. There might be some problems with the authentication, for example. And then when everything is working correctly, it also shows that to you quite easily. So really needed. Please deploy it. It can be deployed quite easily by group policies. It's just 1 megabyte file, and it can be configured by group policies as well. Actually, there's a link in that implementation. There's a link which says that node, use SSTP as a backup connection. So when the user hits that link, it goes to a portal, UAG portal, which provides the SSTP portal for the users. So that's a pretty nice way to do the backup for remote access. Of course, that UAG, it might be a good idea to have another UAG box for that SSTP connection Otherwise, if the DAs are down, maybe the first one, the boxes are not able to provide the SSTP connection as well. So, questions. Now it's good time to make questions because we don't have so many people here. So I will show the configuration because it's not that hard to do. So questions at this moment? Go ahead. Risk assessment, if you are willing to do that, that's a long discussion. There's a lots of pros and cons to do that, and it's another discussion that you in direct access implementation, that's a must. So if you're not willing to do that, you're unable to do the direct access with UAC or R2. The UAG, well, that's also depending on the partner. I have seen implementations which have been done in days or a couple of weeks, depending just how big is the environment and how mature is the infrastructure. You have to have fully working PKI, the grills should be there, there must be network location server capabilities. So you just have to be mature enough to handle like a 2010 networks. You just cannot set it up and leave it alone like you used to do with the VPN concentrators. Yeah, it's working. Everything open to internal network, and it just works.
We had our direct access up and running for a while. One of my colleagues that can't be here left asked why the requirement or why the recommendation in the guidance of Microsoft about using public PKI versus corporate PKI.
Well, my personal view is that you can use your internal PKI. It just have to be enterprise PKI. If you're running that smoothly and you're able to have the grills outside, for example, that might be an issue in some areas. So that's the main. There's no reason why you're not supposed to use your own internal PKI for everything. You're able to do that quite easily. So this is UAG, two network interfaces, and the UAG direct access configuration looks like this. So we have gone through the configuration requirements, so now we know a little bit more about the stuff that we are actually configuring. So the first question is that who will be members of the direct access? So there will be an Active Directory group that these computers are able to use the direct access. Well, that's the first requirement for configuration. Then the DA server itself, there must be IPs facing the internet. So two external internet-facing IPs, just because of the Teredo server and relay. So that's the reason we are using two IPs for that. And then internally we have IPs as well. If we are using IPv6 connectivity or native IPv6 connectivity internally, then of course we have to use that one as well. If you're using IZAP, there's links that you must follow to be sure that the IZAP is configured correctly internally as well. You want to use NAT64 and DNS64. In this case, UAG provides those services for us. And then the authentication option, the UAG trusts this CA, and actually we are using like internal CA in this case. If we want to have the smart card integration, tick the box. If you want to use the NAP integration, just select that one. Quite easy to do. And then the resources, there were two tunnels, so accessing the management side, the infrastructure servers, there's the network location server. So this must be up and running each time that the clients are accessing it. What are the DNS suffixes that we're using? So when we're using the local DNS server names or service names, then it goes through the DNS64, and we know that they are internal resources. The only thing that is excluded here is the location server, because we didn't want that to be accessed by the DA clients when they are outside of our network. Otherwise, it would be like an internal loop going back and forward. And then the management servers and DCs, so we are just configuring where are these resources. Quite straightforward to do. And the last thing pretty much is the application server configuration. So basically you're just saying what kind of resources you're able to use with the second channel. And the UAG is able to configure the group policies which are needed, and the end result is that you actually have this is a one Windows 7 client, and at the moment it's facing the internet and it's using like a public IPv4 address at the moment. So I actually know that the DA is working, and we are using 64 translation for that client because it's using like a public IPv address. If I change the connection here, let's enable this NATed internet access here and then disable this one. So you can see the indicator, it just flashes a little bit, and the DA access is established by using the Teredo in this case because of the NAT. So it takes a few minutes to establish the IPsec security handshaking, and that's about it. It should be working quite smoothly in a few seconds. That said, I have spent my hour, so one or at least two things. Remember, fill the evals. I want to be here next year as well. So if you liked it, please fill the evals. If you didn't like, there's drinks outside somewhere. You can find those. So have a nice take it farewell drinks. And if you have any questions, I will be here. I'm easy to spot, big guy like me, so you can drop by and ask questions that you want. Thank you.